Good morning. Hi, babies. Guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I am getting dinner started. I have been busy working on stuff all day again today. I've been preserving food. I have been, well, I started painting the trim around my kitchen. Let me turn this overhang light off real quick. Up there, when I did the faux shiplap treatment to the ceiling, I planned to finish it off with some trim just to give that nice clean edge. And I did the trim about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and it still needed to be painted. So I got started doing that today. I am going to go and finish it off by caulking the seam where the trim meets the ceiling, because it looks a little rough. Where the paint kind of comes together, and touches both surfaces, it just makes it look strange. Now I could have prevented that by painting the trim before I put it on the ceiling, but I didn't. So I will simply go back and I will caulk that seam, and I'll use a kind of caulk that can be painted over. So I'll just caulk it, let it dry, and then I'll just go back and I'll touch up and paint over it so that it all blends together and you won't really be able to notice. But it definitely gives it a much more finished look, and I'm very happy with the results. I still have to do this side over here from the edge of the counter to the corner over there, but about 2/3 or so of the kitchen is finished, minus the caulking and touch-up. But yeah, so that has been coming along. So now we've had a little bit of a cold snap, you might say. It's only 85 degrees outside, which is practically frigid as compared to what it has been. And so Mr. Smith requested that I make kielbasa stew for supper tonight. And in order to make that, we were going to need some more milk, which we didn't really have much of in the fridge. So he ran to the store to grab some real quick while I'm getting dinner started. Now, this kielbasa stew is a super easy recipe, and it's something I've made countless times over the years. And generally it uses some frozen mixed vegetables, some cubed potatoes, some kielbasa, smoked sausage, and you make sort of a vegetable broth by cooking the vegetables together with liquid, with water, or you could use beef broth or vegetable broth, you know, whatever you've got on hand. But you can just easily do it with water and save the expense of using broth. I just fry up some onion and kielbasa. I just get the kielbasa nice and browned, or smoked sausage, and the onion nice and tender, and then I add in the vegetables, add just enough water to cover the vegetables, just barely. Cook them until they are tender, and then I add in the milk and thickener, whether it's flour or cornstarch or tapioca starch, whatever it is I feel like using. Now generally I will use fresh potatoes, and I will peel them, maybe peel them, depends on what kind of potatoes I'm using. I almost never peel baby reds or Yukon Golds or anything like that. I will trim off the rough edges and the eyes or you know, blemishes, but as far as the potato itself, I generally don't peel any more of it. I just leave it on there. But today, since I've got a couple of jars of potatoes that I've canned, I have a couple with those buckled lids, so I want to use them up right away. I don't want to leave them in the pantry too long with these defective lids. And I want to use them while I know they're still sealed. So that's what I'm going to use today. I've been getting a lot of questions about canning potatoes and what I do with them. And as a matter of fact, my father called me the other day and he's like, so what you been doing? I'm like, oh, just got done canning a bunch of potatoes. And he goes, potatoes? I said, yeah. He goes, now my mom, my grandmother, canned all sorts of things, but I don't remember her canning potatoes. Well, that's true. But I grew up in the Midwest, and up there, most houses have basements. It's very unusual for a house not to have a basement. So everybody's pretty much got this really great, nice cold space to store things like root vegetables. We don't have that here in the South. And I have tried keeping potatoes in the pantry, in the laundry room, and you know what? They don't keep very long. So if I want to have potatoes at any given point, and I want them to last more than a few days, I'm gonna have to can them. And so he immediately asked me, which is a question I've been getting asked a lot, how do you use them? Well, you can make them into mashed potatoes, you know, just drain them, mash them up, and add all the things you need for mashed potatoes. You can put them in soups. You can drain them really good and pan fry them. So pretty much any way you would want to use cubed potatoes, you can use canned. cute potatoes. Alright, so I'm adding a little bit of butter to my pan here, just to kind of get it going, about a tablespoon or so. And like I said, you don't have to use broth when you're making this soup. By browning the sausage and browning the onions or caramelizing the onions a little bit, it adds plenty of flavor to this liquid, so you can save your beef broth, vegetable broth, for other things that need a little bit of extra help or flavor, nutrition, and all of that. I have made it with broth in the past to do this, but I really find that it's not necessary. Alright, so my kielbasa and onion are cooked here. I got some good brown bits in the bottom of my pot here. So now I'm just going to go ahead and pour in my jar of potatoes. And I'm going to add the liquid right to it because I need to add liquid to the soup anyways. And since the liquid has that lovely potato flavor, that's just going to add more flavor than plain water would. I will still have to add a little bit of water, but why not utilize the starches that are in that potato water and the flavor and all that to add to the soup. Alright, so now I'm going to add in, I've just got about, I don't know, about 2 cups of frozen vegetables, mixed vegetables. About a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of thyme, and parsley. These are all actually about half a teaspoon of everything. A little bit of salt and pepper. Alright, and then I'm just going to have to add just enough liquid to cover the vegetables. And I just barely cover them. I'm going to bring that up to a boil and then reduce it down to a simmer and let it cook just until the vegetables are done. Alright, so my soup has been cooking, my vegetables are pretty much done. So now I'm going to add the final part to this soup, which is what makes it into a creamy soup. I've got a cup of milk. I'm going to add in a tablespoon of tapioca flour. Alright, I'm just whisking that together. You could also use flour or cornstarch, whichever you prefer. Just pour that in. Give it a stir and then just let it come back to a boil and it will thicken right up. And that is all it takes to make this soup. This is something I've made, I don't even know how many times I've made this soup over the years. I do have the recipe for it on my blog, cosmopolitancornbread.com. I will put a link to that down below or up here in a card, depending upon where you're watching this video. And the way I have it on my blog is how I made it originally, and I believe I use like beef broth and stuff like that in there. But like I said, you don't actually have to use that because you're adding so much flavor by browning the kielbasa or smoked sausage before you add in your vegetables. So that is it. Dinner's done.